You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly.
Good afternoon. I am Holly Light, the chair of LMDC, and I now call to order the meeting of the directors of the Lower Manhattan Development Corporation for Wednesday, April 9, 2025. I'd like to start off by saying that there have been several updates from the board since our last meeting. First, two very long-serving directors, actually I think both here from the start, announced their resignations from the board in July 2024. That's Tom Johnson and Carl Weisbrod. I know I speak for all of us in thanking Tom and Carl for both dedicating many years of service as directors. Over the course of their tenure on this board, they were excellent stewards of the organization, and they poured their heart and soul into the mission of LMDC to rebuild Lower Manhattan after September 11th. We all owe them a debt of gratitude. So for the record, thank you again to Tom and Carl. Also, as expected, LMDC's longtime president, Dan Sinello, retired in June of 2024 after over 22 years of service to LMDC. Dan joined LMDC in 2002 in the wake of the September 11th attacks and worked tirelessly to assist the recovery of Lower Manhattan in many roles. Dan was involved with and shaped nearly all of LMDC's projects over the years, including administering over $2.7 billion in funds, supporting the planning of the redevelopment of the World Trade Center site, including the National September 11 Memorial and Museum, providing funds to residents and businesses struggling in the aftermath of the attacks, rebuilding and strengthening infrastructure and transportation resources, supporting construction of the Perlman Performing Arts Center at the World Trade Center site, renovating dozens of open spaces, parks, and playgrounds, developing enhanced waterfronts, including Pier 42, preserving, repairing, and renovating affordable housing, and overseeing dozens of grants to community and cultural organizations in Lower Manhattan. So, although we've all had the chance to give Dan our thanks in person, I want to take this opportunity again, to put on the record our thanks to Dan for his 22 plus years of service to LMDC and to wish him all the best in this next chapter. And that brings us to today's meeting, which in line with this new era for LMDC is taking place at the offices of ESD, our parent corporation. There are items on the agenda that would streamline LMDC's operations as we continue to close out projects and grants, including the appointing certain ESD officials as ex officio officers of LMDC. In advance of today's meeting, the directors receive the relevant written materials and are free to ask questions at any time. Consistent with the policy of our parent corporation, we also welcome public comment on the items considered on today's agenda. I'd like to state for the record that no members of the public are in attendance today to provide comments. In addition, the public was given the opportunity to comment on agenda items by submitting written comments on or before 3 p.m. yesterday to publiccomment@renewnyc.com. No written comments were received regarding today's agenda items. Before we begin with the substantive portion of the meeting, I'd like to ask the directors whether anyone has any potential conflict of interest with respect to any of the items on today's agenda. If so, please make an appropriate disclosure on the record at this time, and we will be sure you recuse yourself from discussion or vote of those items. I have a note that Catherine McVeigh-Hughes is going to recuse herself from a vote on the 5/16/23 minutes because she is not able to attend that meeting. So we will recuse you for that vote. Okay, our first order of business is approval of the minutes of that very meeting, May 16th, 2023. And we will also do a second vote for the minutes of March 11th, 2024. Do I hear a motion to approve the May 16, 2023 minutes?
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Except for Catherine, note that she is recused from that one. We'll now, may I get a motion for approving the minutes of the March 11th, 2024 meeting?
Motion.
Second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Great, those pass. Thank you very much. Okay, I would now like to call upon Matt Acasella, the Associate Counsel at ESD, to present the first authorization item on today's agenda, which is a request to create new officer positions and to elect those officers. Matt?
Good afternoon, directors. This is a request to approve a few things. Number one, in the wake of Dan's retirement, of course, to appoint Arden Sokolow, EVP at ESD for Real Estate and Planning, as LMDC's new president, and also to make the position of president and other officers to be ex officio with certain ESD officials, which I'll get into. But this is consistent with how many of ESD's other subsidiaries operate. It's to, create efficiencies and make sure that we have sufficient officers and staff to tend to any business or needed signatures. So the request is to appoint Arden president, and then anybody who serves as in her position in the future as EVP of Real Estate and Planning to be LMDC's president. LMDC's treasurer would be ESD treasurer Matthew Bray, or whoever serves as ESD's treasurer in the future. We, of course, will continue to have Steve Konopko as VP for internal audit, who he also now serves as that position for ESD. And whoever serves as ESD corporate secretary would continue to be secretary for LMDC. The one really new thing here would be to create one new position of vice president for legal and general counsel, and to appoint Joshua Bloodworth, who serves as ESD's EVP for legal and general counsel, to that position, just to ensure that we have legal representation and advice for LMDC going forward. There wasn't an official general counsel position in the LMDC bylaws, but we can create the directors could create a vice president position, so that we think it would be appropriate to do that here. So happy to answer any questions, but otherwise, that's it.
Any questions for Matt?
Why is the VP of Internal Audit not ex officio? All the other roles, you guys seem to have determined that, but not that one?
Well, it's because we'll never be without Steve. No. It's not a position that's mentioned in the minutes, and I think we assume Steve will be here for some time, so it wasn't put forward as an ex officio position, but we certainly could revisit that in the future.
I don't care deeply, but it seems like you guys are trying to clean something up and in some ways wind LMDC down. So there's sort of another step in that direction. Just seems like we're here. Why wouldn't we knock it out?
Finish cleaning.
Yeah.
Could you imagine a future where someone else has your same title at ESD?
Not in the foreseeable future, but I mean, it could happen.
We could.
I mean, I was an officer of LMDC prior to this meeting. I've been an officer of LMDC since '07, but.
We could amend the resolution to make the VP of Internal Audit ex officio with ESD's VP Internal Audit. That's easy enough.
I don't
Yeah, honestly.
care deeply one way or the other. It just seems like we're here. It's a reasonable
I
thing.
assume the reason, Matt, is just because Steve already had the non-ex officio role, so you weren't changing it. Is that accurate? Whereas all of these others are sort of being.
That's accurate. I mean,
Or-
Debbie also has the role of Debbie
Right,
Royce
that's
has
true.
the role of corporate
So it
secretary.
is, okay, so there is an anomaly there.
But corporate secretary is kind of mentioned in the bylaws specifically, whereas Steve's role is not. So, but I think it would be certainly a fine idea to make the VP Internal Audit ex officio with ESD's position corresponding.
Consistent with the rest, okay. Is the consensus to add this change to the resolution?
Let's amend the resolution.
We're amending the resolution. Okay,
Yep, we can pass the resolution subject to that
amendment,
amendment.
okay. Are there any other questions for Matt? Okay, could I get a motion for approval with the amended resolution?
I'll make a motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, and thank you to Arden and Steve and Debbie and everyone else and Matt for your incredible service to do this, and Debbie for many, many years and Steve for many, many years. So this is, we are lucky to have an amazing staff of this corporation for quite a long time. Okay. I am now going to call on Steve, LMDC's Vice President for Internal Audit, to present the next three items on the agenda. Steve?
Thank you, directors. The first item is the ratification of an emergency action taken by the board to extend and amend the website services agreement with Ngenius Solutions. Staff used the emergency authorization. We needed to have the contract amended before the end of the fiscal year, as the physical firewall that was on the old site was expiring. So we needed to move the site to a virtual firewall. The authorization request increased the contract by $21,000. This new site that we moved from Rackspace to GoDaddy, the hosting actually went down from $2,700 a month to $1,000 a month. So we do have a net savings. So we just need the board to ratify the actions taken by the chair.
Any questions for Steve?
That's just a dumb question. Is there, if I type in LMDC into my phone, what will happen? Do we have a website?
The website is renewnyc.com. So
That's it.
if you do Lower
And then-
Manhattan Development Corporation, Google should show you
I'm gonna try
renewnyc.com.
that right now. And then that sends you to ESD land, or it has its own thing?
We have our own website. HUD wanted LMDC
Long
to have
time.
its own website
So
since
that's why we
inception.
have this, even though it's
Yes.
kind of
And that's why
silly.
the firewall is like old technology. It was
That's
old
what-
technology
right.
because we've had it since the beginning, right?
Yes.
And we're required, even though we've been in essence subsumed into ESD.
Well, we haven't
have our
actually,
own separate
we actually haven't
identity.
been subsumed into LMDC. We've always been a subsidiary of ESD.
Right.
But because we're fully 100% federally funded, HUD wanted to have the records separate. So our website offers access to the public for all of our information, plus our quarterly reports, action plans.
Okay. So somebody can go, a human being can go to hit this and look stuff up.
Absolutely.
There it is.
Still there?
Although we're not at 1 Liberty Street anymore, but that's a Google.
We do notice the meetings and things on ESD's site and it
And then
directs-
across, whatever. Okay. Cool.
If-
Yeah, today's meeting was posted on it.
On this, on Renew.
So the requirement to have a website was because of the HUD funding, right?
Correct.
Do we always have to keep a website, or once we've exhausted HUD funding, can we not?
HUD funding, yeah.
And have
When
we
we close the
exhausted?
grant, presumably we could shut it down, although I think there would probably be,
There's audit
who
requirements.
wanna-
Yeah, there's audit requirements for 3 years after the grant's closed. That
3 years it
documentation would have to
stays.
be available.
So it's just easier to keep it in its own
Okay.
website, and then
Correct.
at the end of the day, when we're all long.
Correct.
There may come a time in the future where it's more integrated into ESD's website, as long as we can keep what we need to keep,
So-
but it's just a slower process.
Yes.
any other questions for Steve?
Well, I guess this is a question about all of these things, which I know, which is where you're going also, which is all of these small little contracts we're voting on are being funded by whom? By,
Department of Housing, Urban
so
Development.
there still is money left in the original
There's
grant for
admin, yeah.
admin, and none of that money is that money at all in risk in the current environment, or we just make draws and they send us the money? Have we made a draw since we've been a change of leadership?
Yes.
And they just do it. So we don't have any concerns about whatever things that we're approving today, not having the funds to actually pay for them.
Federal government is,
But the thing, like, does ESG, I don't know, I'm just curious, like, how much more money is left for us to pull down?
I mean,
Who is in charge?
the admin, do you know, Steve, how much is left in it's basically the 30 million in the affordable housing
Right.
bucket, and then there's the sort of money to run this. Do you know offhand, Steve, what we have in admin left? Sort of on that side of
Yeah, there's
operations?
approximately
Yeah, just give me like ballpark number.
$40 million.
$40 million.
But like Holly said,
30 of that
30
is
is
earmarked.
in 31 millions in affordable housing, and then there's other projects that are ongoing.
Right.
That have the bulk of the money. In the admin, I believe there's close to 400,000.
But that money is currently sitting at the US Treasury.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So I think it's a fair point.
LMDC has never had the money in
No, I
hand.
understand. So that's actually, we should maybe take this offline or have a session about this.
Yeah. But for today, our admin money is
Our
there.
admin is money in there, and we can make good to our vendors and not
Yes.
send the bill to you at ESD. Okay.
Okay. So do I have a motion to approve the extension of the website contract?
So moved.
Second? All in favor? Aye. Okay. Steve?
The next item is the approval of the 2025-2026 LMDC administrative budget. This is for planning administration for the fiscal year ending March 26th, the amount of $299,999. Got it below $300,000. It's approximately 43% less than the 2025 budget, and it reflects a 38% reduction in personnel costs and a 53% reduction in other than personnel services, which mostly comes from the fact that we closed the office at 22 Cortlandt Street. That's basically the budget. If anybody has any questions on the numbers, I can go further.
Just going back to the administrative money that you said is sitting in an account, I think you said ballpark 400,000, or I heard of 400,000. So if we're using 300 in this fiscal, does that imply that there's 100 left, or is that not how it works?
Yeah, there's a little bit more. I would say closer to 500 if I'm looking at the numbers. But yeah, that's what it is. But we expect, again, admin budget to shrink going forward as well.
I would park this in the same not for today category, but probably worth having a discussion of how the next budget is going to work, unless you guys plan on cutting it down by another like 70%. Which maybe that's the expectation, but
Maybe that's the thing we should ask for, is like a projection of a runway, a rundown.
Yeah, we could do that. We could provide the board with that.
have that for the next meeting.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Sounds good. Okay, so a to-do item, a follow-up to kind of show the trajectory of the admin budget going forward. And with that note, are there any other questions about the operating budget for 25-26? Okay, there are no comments from the public, so could I get a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and last item, Steve.
Last item is LMDC staff's requesting board authorization to amend its existing contract with the EFPR Group. They are the independent external auditor. Since its inception, HUD has required LMDC to prepare separate financial statements from our parent company, as we are, again, 100% federally funded and have to do a single audit every year. Since 2007, LMDC has met this requirement by using the same auditor as ESD. It just makes sense not to have a separate audit firm. The authorization we're asking for is up to $80,000 for a 2-year period to audit fiscal year ends 2026 and, if necessary, fiscal year end 2027. Obviously, we're into fiscal year 2025, so we will have an audit next year, and this amount would cover that. If LMDC exists this time next year, we would have to have an audit as of 2027. So this contract would cover that period. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Okay, and no questions from the or comments from the public, so could I get a motion for approval? Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. So there being no further business, I will call for...
Chair, sorry,
What?
Chair.
Yes.
I think it's worth mentioning, as you mentioned at the top, with Tom Johnson and Carl Weisbrod resigning from the board, that there may be future discussions about the appropriate size of the board. Currently, it's set at 8 in the bylaws. With Tom and Carl having resigned, we're at 6. The bylaws require having a equal split between city and state. So, no decisions have been made on that, and we'll have further conversations. But, it may be appropriate at some point for the board to think about and talk about reducing the number of people on the board, but keeping the required, division, city and state. So I just wanted to mention that.
It's a little teaser, Matt, huh? Keep it spicy. Okay.
And we would just, the way the bylaws work, we just would put that forward and amend it ourselves.
That's one way. That would probably.
Yeah.
There's other kind of paperwork, that could accomplish it another way, but there's several ways to do it.
Intrigue.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So
Okay.
it's fair to say it can either be 2, 4, 6, or 8?
Correct. If we keep the even
algorithm.
distribution.
My age, Holly. A lot going on in there.
We gave you that pad of paper. It's just keep it real.
Okay. 2, 4, 6, or 8.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you for that, Matt. Any other business? Okay. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
And we're adjourned.